I really believe in the process of manifestation. I believe that energetically we have to imagine that our success is already there. If you're happy where you are in your life right now, you are a success. The more grateful we are, the more we appreciate our life, the better it gets.
This episode isn't for someone who is looking for quick fixes or surface level conversation. Peggy McColl isn't just an author, she is a mindset architect who helped thousands of people rewire their mindset. For over 35 years, she has been doing the business and delivering successful after successful entrepreneur. For more than 4 years, she was owing together a business with late and legendary Bob Proctor, one of the greatest minds in the human history. But Peggy's journey isn't about easy answers and overnight breakthroughs. It's about relentless pursuit and transformation. The grit it takes to confront your own limitations. The courage to step into unknown and keep showing up even when it's hard. When I sat down with Peggy, I was expecting mindset motivations and a quick fixes in self-doubt and self-belief. What I didn't expect was the true and pure honesty. Honesty from the darkest moments in somebody's life to the most brilliant and shiniest ones. At one point, Peggy told me that growth isn't glamorous, it's messy, and it's sometimes uncomfortable. This stuck with me for a while. Everything we're seeing on the social media of entrepreneurs is the most polished version of their lifestyle, success, and their families. What we don't see is something what we actually spoke here at this episode. My name is Graz, this is NGrS Show, and today with me, Dr. Peggy McColl.
I love the name of your show, and I'm so grateful to be here. Like Inside Out, I mean, that's really what it's all about. So it's a great topic, a great name, and I love serving people as well. So it was such a delight to receive your invitation.
Yeah, and I actually didn't know that detail before you told me, but you actually have PhD in philosophy and metaphysics science. So let's open this episode exactly from inside out. Tell me, please, uh, how and from where desire the wish to you make a PhD degree in that sphere?
When I graduated from high school, first of all, it was a miracle that I think that I graduated because I didn't like school. I was not a straight A student. In fact, I just barely squeaked through and managed to pass and get a high school degree. But when I was finished high school, I just wanted to get out there and work. I wanted to earn money. I wanted to do something that I loved. And so I was heavily involved in just, working. I wasn't looking at getting a degree. No one in my family had ever acquired a degree, not one single person. And even at one conversation that I had with my mother about, hey, I think I'll go get a college diploma. She's like, what for? Kind of like it was a waste of time. So it wasn't even on my radar. And, I began studying personal development and personal growth in 1979 when I met Bob Proctor. And this was, again, something that I wasn't looking to get into, but I was working for a corporation at the time in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and they had hired Bob to come in and speak. And so I was forced to go to this event, which I'm so glad that I was because it changed my life, completely changed the trajectory of my life. And so I began studying extensively personal growth, success, self-help, like anything metaphysical science, anything that could help me understand more about why we are the way we are and how to make the change, positive change in our lives so that we can produce consistently better results. So I was studying this for years and years and years, decades. And it wasn't until I was well into my 60s that the thought popped into my consciousness, hey, maybe you should go get your PhD. And
Wow.
so I decided to go for it. I really didn't know what was required. It was just something that I felt would be a really good thing to do, gather more information. And what absolutely pleased me to no end was when I was studying, first of all, I had to get a bachelor degree, then to get my master's degree, and then I went for the PhD. But through all this study on metaphysical science, I discovered that everything that I had previously learned was applicable. It all made sense. It's like I had a degree, if you will, but not with anything formal prior to deciding to get my PhD because of all of the knowledge that I had acquired over the years. So when I made the decision to study and get my degree, it was relatively easy. It was time consuming, but relatively easy and fully enjoyable because I wrote my dissertation on the most effective way to reprogram your subconscious mind. And,
Wow.
doing the dissertation, I had to do, research. And so that's really what initiated the desire to get a PhD was, yeah, I think this would complement my career. It's a credibility builder as well. I do know a lot about this industry, not only from the study, but from application as well, turning my own life around. And before you and I started the call today, I'd mentioned to you, I met Bob Proctor when I was a suicidal young lady. And so I really believe that the materials save my life. And just a few years ago, I'd been diagnosed with metastatic cancer, and it was a pretty serious prognosis. But again, the materials saved my life. So not only can these materials help you improve your life or enjoy your life at another level, but in my case, it definitely helped save my life.
That's very powerful, and you're opening just from the first question, additional questions which I even didn't plan to ask you. Uh, People who watch this podcast or listen, they know that for me, one of the most emotional episodes I ever did was with Brian Proctor, with Bob's son. And it was for many reasons, simply because he was in that office where Bob was working his entire career. And this office is something what I was watching for years before I even managed to meet Brian. And I want to ask you now something what maybe not so many people know, but you actually wrote a book which is pretty much saying your story and Bob's story, just you change the name of the characters in that book. Can you tell me
Yes.
more about that?
Yeah, that was such a fun experience, Nick. This occurred in 2020, so not that long ago. And prior to this point in time, I had already released, I think, somewhere around 18 nonfiction books. And the nonfiction books were in the category of self-help or business, entrepreneurship. And so I got an email one day from somebody that was doing social media for me. She was hired part of our team. And she asked me to do a little reel, a little video on how I wrote my first fiction book. Well, I hadn't written a fiction book at that time. I hadn't done that yet. And so rather than just dismiss it and move on to the next topic of video recommendations, I just stopped for a moment and I just asked myself, do I want to? Do I want to write a fiction book? And I understood, writing because I'd been a writer, for many, many years. And I decided, yes, I do want to write a book. And I didn't know what the book was going to be called. I decided that it would be like written like a parable, where it would be inspired by real life events, inspired by my journey of meeting Bob Proctor when I was suicidal, and how my life transformed. And because there were a lot of different things that had occurred over my life that were really life altering. And so I decided on it was actually Friday, October 31st, 2020. I decided I'm writing a fiction book. And then I'm a real action taker. Like if I decide to do something, I'm moving into action. So then I went into my agenda and I set the date for when it would be completed. And I decided it would be done by the 10th of November. And then I blocked off time in my agenda, hours, like where I would write, because I'm a pretty busy entrepreneur. I'm running a business and I got a lot of appointments, a lot of meetings, a lot of client calls, etc. So I just found where there were openings and I blocked off time to work on this series. And then the next thing that I did was I asked myself, what do I need to believe in order to write a real life-changing, incredible book? And so I just became aware and decided to embrace these beliefs that it's easy, that it's fun, that I'm producing something, phenomenal and that I've completed. So I go to the end result. And this is what I do, this is what I teach. In fact, my 25th book is called The Moment of Alignment. And the subtitle for that book is The Precise Moment Where Intention Becomes Reality. And that means that you embrace the outcome as an accomplished fact. So that's what I was doing. And I just came into my office and I started writing. And I started writing about this young woman named Sophie who goes to a park to kill herself. And that's her intention. And this actually did happen. I did, as a young teenager, I had gone to a park where I was going to kill myself. And obviously I didn't. So
Thank God.
so in the book, yeah. So in the book, what I did was I had Sophie meet this gentleman unexpectedly in the park, and his name is Savvy, Savy, not the word savvy, but Savy, which stands for Stephen Alexander Vaughn. So I made up a character. I created his sort of persona, what he was like, and he became a guiding light for this young girl, Sophie, and gave her suggestions and guidance to just begin to look at things differently, to look at them in a more positive way, and to find the blessings and to look for what's good in the scenarios. And so he invited her to start to think a little differently. And that's how the journey began with writing the series. So I ended up writing three books. It's a trilogy. So the first one's called Savvy Wisdom. The second one is called Savvy Wisdom 2. And the third one is called, I don't know why the balloons are there, but anyways, the third one is called Savvy Wisdom from Beyond. And because, as you know, Nick, Bob Proctor passed away in
Mm.
2021 or 2022, or 3rd, 2022. And so I had written the first, Bob loved them. In fact, I have a little sheet on my desk here somewhere, which is all of the texts Bob had sent me, all these texts about savvy wisdom. I mean, he was in love with the story.
Nice.
In fact, in the first book, when I finished the book, what I wanted to do was have Savvy write a letter to Sophie. And I had finished the book and I sent it to Bob. And I said, Bob, I want you to write that letter. And he said he would. And in fact, he sent me a text the next morning and he said, I'm mad at you. And I said, oh, what are you mad at me for? And he said, you kept me awake all night. I couldn't stop reading. It's so good. And he was in love with the whole idea of savvy wisdom. And so I did the first two books. And then the third book I wrote right after he passed away. And so, in fact, when I was writing book two, he was in the hospital and he was dying. And so I actually had a different ending to that book, but I changed it that Savvy died. And then he comes back, but he comes back because Bob used to say, like, even when he was dying, he would say, just think of me and I'll be there. And because he would recommend a book by Robert Russell called Dry Those Tears, because he was somebody who believed that our spirit just changes form. It's not that we're gone, we're still here. You might not be able to see me or touch me, but I'm still here. And that was very much his philosophy. And so Savvy Wisdom from Beyond is where he still guides Sophie in very unique ways, how he shows up in her life. And that series, I signed a deal with a production company out of LA last year, is going to be made into a movie.
Awesome. This is absolutely awesome, and I'll definitely follow that story. And I would like to keep a little bit longer here because not many people also know you collaborated with Bob. You guys had mutual company for quite some years, right? Uh,
Yes.
can you tell me a little bit back in time, how was looking working with Bob? Not only
Oh
being a
my
friend,
goodness.
but being a business partners in the company.
Yeah, I mean, it was remarkable. I mean, Bob was, I believe, one of the very rare people that were on this planet that was congruent with his message. In other words, he lived it. He didn't just spew the words out of his mouth. He actually lived the message. And even with things like somebody making a joke about something that they don't want, he would say, don't do that because, you'll give it energy. So, anyways, Bob and I were chatting one day, and we just call each other once in a while and have chats, conversations. And he called me one day, and I was looking at purchasing another property. I love real estate, and I was looking at purchasing another property, and it was approximately $1 million more than what I was considering investing at that time. And he said, 1 million is neither big nor small, only thinking makes it so. He said, if you want it, get it. You're the only one standing in your way. And of course, I know that. I mean, it's not something that wasn't uncommon to me or wasn't something that I hadn't been teaching or speaking about as well. And so I started working on an idea because the idea got planted in my mind to do something called making a million look small. And I started to come up with different ideas on how we could bring a message to the world, helping them understand about how to make a million look small. And so I had a call from another colleague of mine, Gay Hendricks, who's very well known in this space as well. And when Gay heard about this idea, he said, I want to do it with you. And then I told Mary Morrissey about it, and she said, I want to do it with you. And I said, well, I can't do it without Bob because Bob originated or helped me originate the idea. So I called Bob and I said, Bob, we're thinking about doing this program called Making a Million Look Small. Would you be willing to be a part of it? And he said, of course. He actually said these words to me. He said, this may be the most important thing I do in my career. And so we formulated a company, we incorporated this company, and the four of us actually did this program together for years. We did live events, we did an online program, we did a higher level program as well. We called it Supermind. But working with Bob was a real treat. Now, first of all, like I'd known Bob, I had known Bob for many, many years. And what a lot of people didn't know about Bob is he had a wicked sense of humor. He was fun and funny, easygoing, and an absolute joy to be around. And so investing a lot of time with him, like I flew with him a lot in his private jet, we traveled together, was such a phenomenal experience because it was just, confirming more of what I already knew. And to share the stage with him was such an honor and a privilege as well. And I really feel that, Bob was somebody like when you're working with him as a business partner, he always invites you to step up your game, like to do a better job, to serve better. In fact, Denny, my husband, was making a comment about this last evening. Whenever I was going on stage, so if Bob was on stage and he was about to introduce me, and I would go up on the stage, he'd hug me and he'd whisper in my ear and he'd say, "Don't mess it up." Like he, as a joke, right? Like don't mess it up. And it always made me smile and he knew I wasn't going to mess it up. But there were times when I'd be, driving down to meet with Bob and he would be doing an event and he'd call me and he'd say, "Where are you?" And I would tell him, "I'm on the highway. I'm, close to where you are." And he goes, "Well, get here in 10 minutes or less because I'm having you go on for the afternoon." It's like, okay. And I would fly to LA and he would be having a private like mastermind with some of his elite clients. And he would see me and he would say, "Could you come and teach, this morning?" When he did his 1% Club events in Hawaii, which was $60,000 tuition to go, very exclusive high-end event, he asked me to come to every one of them. He only did three ever, and he asked me to come and speak at those events. But it was always, first of all, a privilege and an honor. I feel Bob Proctor was the best on the planet, bar none. There was nobody else as good as Bob Proctor. He really knew his stuff. And not only did he know his stuff, but it worked. Like it absolutely worked and it would work for anyone. And he had a great gift to simplify information. So being that close and personal with him just was a constant reminder. The repetition is so important to really change our own beliefs as well. But, sharing the stage with somebody who was so incredible just invited me to be better, like to create a better version of myself. Not that I wasn't having those moments of like, oh my goodness, I'm going on stage with the great Bob Proctor. I mean, that would, sometimes happen. And I would have to have a conversation with myself to calm down, to, be comfortable and to,
to work with that.
to just go on the stage and deliver. Yeah. And so it was an absolute joy. Every moment of it was incredible and rewarding and exhilarating. And it was always an opportunity to improve upon, what we're doing. Like Bob used to talk about better, and he said, better is a good word. These were Bob's words. Better is a good word. And he would say, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. Nothing stays the same. And I
Yeah.
absolutely believe that to be true. And so working with him so closely, simply invited me to be a better version of who I am.
Yeah, I fully agree with that because one of my philosophy is that nowadays when everything changes so fast, if you stay stagnant, that's only your belief and it's fake one because
Right.
everything around you moves that fast that you're definitely sliding. You're not staying stagnant in the place. But you mentioned working in high of the high elite program of Bob Proctor. And I know that you also have worked with so many high level individuals and entrepreneurs. Uh, there must be some common thread you see among those who truly succeed. Can you tell me
Yes.
what do you feel and what do you think this is about?
Yep. Absolutely. First of all, they have to have a passion. It has to be something that's like a burning desire. Like, I got to do it, got to have it, going to make it happen. Like, that has to be there.
Like a
And it's
hunger,
something that, yeah, like that hunger, right? Like, Napoleon Hill talked about it in Think and Grow Rich. In fact, in the beginning of Think and Grow Rich, he says there's a secret in this book that once you discover it, it could change your life, in only positive ways. But he doesn't say specifically what it is, but it's the burning desire. Like, you have to have that like dog with a bone kind of mentality. In fact, that's one of the books that I wrote, Be a Dog with a Bone. Like, you absolutely have to have that, like, it's happening. When I met my husband as an example, we started dating. He was with the military for 30 years in Canada. And he wasn't used to entrepreneurship, and I'm an entrepreneur. And so he asked me this question. He said, "What happens when you're not earning money?" And I said, "I'm always earning money. I'm a money earning machine." That's what I said to him. I'm a money earning machine. So anyone that has succeeded in any way, they have a belief system that supports that. And if you don't have a belief system that supports success, then you have to build it, right? It's like if you want your body to be in physical condition, you got to go to the gym and you got to work out. And it's not just work out, it's like, what is it that you want to tone? What areas of your physical body do you want to improve upon? And that's the same thing for any entrepreneur. It's like, what do you need to believe? And I shared that with writing the fiction book, right? I asked myself the question, what do I need to believe in order to have this go well and to produce something phenomenal? Same thing for an entrepreneur. What do you need to believe in order for that? So entrepreneurs or anyone that has succeeded, they're willing and ready to do whatever they need to do. They recognize that there is always, always, always room for improvement. It's not like we're perfect. Nobody is. Like, there's something that we can do that's better. There's a way that we can serve people in greater ways. And so the willingness has to be there. So I think you have to have the burning desire. You have to have the willingness to do whatever it takes, provided it's legal, moral, and ethical, of course. And then you have to be consistent and persistent. You got to be consistent and persistent. This isn't a once in a while thing. This is an everyday thing. And I'm sure, Nick, you know all about that as well. Like, I think about just observing how you manage your podcast. It's like perfection, right? You do the editing, you get deep, you're very cautious, you're careful, you do your research. This is what successful people do. They go the extra mile. And I find that, Wayne Dyer did a program called It's Never Crowded Along the Extra Mile. It is not crowded along the extra mile. It's not. So what does that really mean? It's like the common denominator of success is that successful people are willing to do the things that unsuccessful people aren't willing to do. And that
yeah,
means you've got to discipline yourself every day. You may not want to get up at 5 in the morning. You may not feel like doing this, but you do it anyway, right? You're going to do it anyway because that's necessary in order to get to where you want to go. And so you've got to be flexible as well. Like, when I was younger, there was a cartoon character called Gumby, and it was just this little rubber character. And I feel that as an entrepreneur, we have to be like Gumby. I mean, Nick, you're talking about change a moment ago. Like, change is inevitable. There's going to be change. And we live in a highly changing world, with technology.
oh,
I
absolutely.
personally love technology. Yeah, like, it's just, and if you're not on board, you'll be left behind. Like, people that are critical of AI as an example or don't like AI, if they think it's going away, they need to think again because it's not going away. So
100%.
find a way that you can work with AI that feels good to you, right? And so that's flexibility. And that's another aspect I feel that successful people have, the willingness to be flexible. Also, when you get knocked down, because everybody does, it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, everybody's going to get knocked down. We're all experience adversity. You got to be willing to get right back up, right? Get right back up. And you may get knocked down, bam, 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 like, especially entrepreneurs that start a business. Like when I incorporated my company, I was not formally educated. I did not have entrepreneurial parents. I didn't have loads of money sitting in the bank account, but I had a desire, I had a passion, and I'm going to do whatever it takes. And there are not a lot of people that are willing to do what entrepreneurs need to do to get to where they want to go. Like, some people look at success and think, oh, they're an overnight success, or they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. It's like very rarely is that the case. But, you've got to be willing to, put in the energy, put in the effort, put in the time. You may not get results, but you got to try another approach. And if that doesn't work, you try another approach. And if that doesn't work, you try another approach. And you never, ever, 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 ever give up. You got to keep going. So
I love
those
it.
are some of what I believe are aspects of successful people.
I love it. Speaking probably a few weeks ago with John Sonmez, and I had a question for him. What do you think it's older, discipline or motivation? He said, "Oh, let's speak about that. Do you know Michael Phelps? This guy was 6 years disciplined so that he can get
Yeah.
Olympic medal. Do you think he was motivated all these days in 6 years?" And I said, "Yeah, definitely
No.
not." And he says, "Sure. So it's the
Yeah.
same like with you, with me. We don't will to do something this morning, today. We just don't feel like that. But if we're disciplined, we will still do it. Maybe we do some
Right.
bad work, not perform the best. But if we are disciplined, the progress will happen." And I
Right.
love it. I love it how you form it. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's probably a general way to say that everybody can face slaps, falling down, being heated by life,
Right.
by destiny, call it however, by business. But I would say that you have unfair advantage than most of the people because you know how to deal with that, knowing how to work with inner yourself. So can you tell me any time, let's take as an example, when you faced some major setback, how you turn it into the breakthrough? What is the way how you
Yeah.
work with this?
Yeah, it's such a good question, such an important one too. And I appreciate you saying that, but when I think about it, it's like I've been through the war, right? If you will, the struggle, the challenging times, and so I learned it. I learned it from having that desire to no longer suffer. And like when I think about when I first got into personal development, the desire was there because I didn't want to live, right? Like when you don't want to live, it's a very dark, bleak place to be. Like you literally want to end your life. And I know there's people that
Yeah.
have been there before. Maybe there's some people that are listening to this podcast have been there before. And so, I wanted to get out of the emotional pain. That was the original driver. But I would say, out of my entire life, probably the greatest experience that taught me about what you just asked is when I was diagnosed with metastatic cancer because it was something that was a big surprise. It was something like, wow. It was a bizarre experience in one way because it was like, that's interesting. And I didn't judge it. I wasn't getting upset at myself or mad at the creator or anything like that. It is what it is. So when I was given the diagnosis, I was strangely calm. And the reason was because number one, I decided I am not going to be create my identity as a cancer patient. I am not going to be one with cancer. It's there, but in my mind, I'm going to see my body only as a healthy body, not healed, a healthy body. And there's a difference. There's a difference because healed invites in there's some kind of disease in your physical body. And so I immediately decided, okay, I'm going to listen to the medical professionals and I'm going to do what they suggest because they had suggested treatment. And all the while, I am going to put my energy, which are my thoughts, my emotions, everything into alignment with what I desire. And that is, I am in a healthy body, a perfectly healthy body. Every cell of my body vibrates in perfect health. And so that's what I had decided. And then I asked myself, what's great about this? Now, that's a strange question for a cancer patient to ask. What's great about this? And what was great about the experience was that, we had discovered it so that we could do something about it before it consumed my entire body because it had spread, but it wasn't everywhere. So it was something that the medical professionals felt was treatable, which was great. I have a wonderful husband that I'm blessed to be married to. And so it was great that I had the support of him. My sister, who lived in another city, came up to my city and basically moved in with us to help while I was going through treatment because the treatment was absolutely brutal. I mean, it brought me to my knees. It did. It was like I was so sick, like so sick. The treatment almost killed me, not the cancer.
Yeah.
And so, when I was going through that experience, I was just constantly in a place of two things were going on. I was looking for the positive, looking for the blessings, and then the second thing was I would choose to focus on I'm in a healthy body, I'm in a healthy body, I'm in a healthy body, regardless of what was going on as it related to what was physically actually going on. Because the cancer, Nick, started in my mouth. It actually started in my tongue and it went to my neck. And I had all these tumors in my neck. And so that's where it had spread to. So it was isolated in this part of my body, which to me felt like, oh, that's not so bad. We don't have to take out an organ or anything like that. And the only way to treat it is through radiation. They can't do
Mm,
surgery because it's your neck, right? And there's all these,
yeah. Sensitive parts. Yeah.
you know, right. And so they couldn't do surgery. Chemo apparently didn't work with that kind of cancer, but it was radiation. So when they told me I was going to have 35 radiation treatments, I thought, oh, bonus. I've dodged a bullet. I had no idea what the radiation would do to me.
Yeah.
And, they had scheduled me for 35 treatments, but after two, I couldn't swallow. And that became very difficult because I couldn't swallow, I couldn't eat, couldn't drink. And so that became real, I became very dehydrated and I started to like wither away into this tiny little thing because, I wasn't eating. And so they, started feeding like a meal in a bottle kind of thing. Then they had to put a stomach tube in because that was the only way to put the nutrition. And I would be going for the treatments. They'd hook me up to intravenous to put, fluids in my body. Then they, put the stomach tube. But it got to a point where I was so sick from the radiation. I actually had radiation poisoning that I was vomiting. I would just constantly vomit, vomit, vomit all day long. Couldn't keep anything in. That's when they hospitalized me and brought me back to health. But I never finished the treatment. I couldn't because I was in a radiation poisoning scenario. But the whole time I was like flat on my back, in a hospital bed, so weak I couldn't stand. I'd be listening to audios. Bob made me a custom audio. So when
Awesome.
when Bob found out I'd been diagnosed, he said, "I'm going to make you an audio and you're going to listen to it every day." And he did. And I did. I listened to him talk to me every day, all day about how I'm in a healthy body. And, within a couple months, I was back and perfectly fine. And in fact, I had gone for the scans because the oncologist was very concerned because I didn't finish treatment. And I knew it was gone. And she called me and said, I'm amazed. There's not like a sign of cancer anywhere in your physical body. It's completely gone. And so that was, it was my most challenging life experience, but blessing, right? And now when I have someone come to me and say, like they're dealing with some kind of health challenge, I know what that's like. I have the empathy, I have the compassion. And I think as a teacher, speaker, mentor, creator, I find it valuable to understand where they're at, right?
Yeah.
Because I've been there. I've been in the
Yeah.
struggle. I know what it's like.
Hey, you. This isn't for you if you want to get just better at sales. This is for people who want to truly dominate it. Either it's DMs, calls, webinars, keynote speaking presentations, or any other form, Instagram or Facebook stories as well. The game has changed. AI, it's just around the corner. So if you're relying on old sales scripts, old sales pitches, or if you're relying to learn sales from the old books written even 2 or 3 years ago, to not even speak about 10 or 20 or 30 years ago bestsellers, you're losing the game. Your sales will not perform on the best way. See, this is why I created this community. To give you unfair sales advantage in every format, every tool for every buyer. Cold DMs, sales calls, sales pitches, understanding the sales pitches, breaking down sales objection, and everything else what you need to understand when it comes to different tonalities and sales psychology so that you understand how to better perform your sales. This isn't another Slack, WhatsApp, or Telegram group. This is a community of people who want to become not just better at sales, sales dominators. It's free, and you can join it just by clicking the link below in the description of this video. But it's absolutely fabulous that you never pick up an identity of cancer patient or identity that with you something is not fine, not regular, not something what we call normal, right? And this is absolutely amazing. And it gives me a trigger to ask you, considering that you never define yourself as such a person, then
Yeah.
how you define success for yourself, and how
Yeah.
this definition evolved through years? Did you change it over the time or no? How do you tell me more about that?
You know what? I heard a definition in the 1990s of what success is that I totally resonate with, and it was Og Mandino. Are you familiar with who Og Mandino was? I think you
Unfor-
might be because he wrote The Greatest Salesman in the World.
I'm not 100%
Do you know
sure.
that book?
I'm not 100%
Okay.
sure, but maybe I am because it sounds very familiar to me.
Yeah, I love Doug Mandino. He was a wonderful man. He's long gone from this planet now, but he wrote a book called The Greatest Salesman in the World. That was
Oh,
one of his books. Huge success.
yes, I know the
Huge,
book.
huge, huge success. Yeah, you know the book. Okay. And there's Scrolls for Success, that book. Anyways, so Og Mandino said this. He said, I believe that success is this. If you're happy where you are in your life right now, you are a success. That's what he said. If you're happy with your life, like last evening, I went for a walk and I'm constantly thanking our creator, thanking the universe for the gifts that I have in my life. I mean, I don't ever, ever take them for granted. And, I have found that the more grateful we are, the more we appreciate our life, the better it gets. That's not why I do it, but it just feels good to have, this wonderful life that I have created. And so I'm happy. I'm really happy with my life. I love that I get up like today, I was thinking about you and I are going to get together. We're going to invest this time here together. I've got other meetings that I just love that I'm doing. And later on, I'm going to go pick up my grandson from school, and my husband and I are going to take him go-karting. And I just love my life. I love every part of it. I'm involved in a lot of different things. I've actually written a whole script for a television series that I've signed a deal with a production company where it's a reality TV show that we're going to be bringing out as well. I'm launching my 25th book. And in fact, last week I wrote a children's book, which was never even on my radar. But the thought entered my consciousness and I thought, I'm going to do it. And I wrote this book called Boo Boo LaRue Finds a Clue. And it's really a fun book. And I'm working with an illustrator who works for Disney. This guy is phenomenal. And so I live this incredible life, but it's by design. And anybody can do this, right? Anybody can design their life the way they want it to be. And back in the middle of the 1990s, I realized that if I really want to take my results to another level, I need to be disciplined every single day. We were talking about discipline earlier. And I need to really reprogram my subconscious mind. And that's accomplished through repetition. And so I created this process called Power Life Script. And I essentially went to work on how do I see my ideal life? What do I believe about myself and about the world or just in general? And how does it feel now that I'm living this life? And I scripted it only with positive words, present tense, as if I'm living it now, and recorded it. And I listened to it every day. I've done that since 19. And here we are, 2025. 30 years I've been doing that. In fact, there's an app for the iPhone, it's free, called Power Life Script. People can find it. I use my app every day, and every when I wake up, I open up my app and I listen to my Power Life script. I listen to it before I do anything else. I listen
Awesome.
to me talk about how incredible my life is and how wonderful it is, as if it's all done, all of it. It's already accomplished. That's living in alignment. And so to me, the definition of success is if you're happy with where your life is right now, you're a success.
Yeah, I want to ask you actually now two questions, thinking and trying to picture everything what you're saying. Uh, do you think that somebody who want to manifest certain things in their life, they must be some sort of believer? They must be religious person in
Oh,
any aspect, or you feel that it's not connected?
Uh, it could help. It could help. It depends on what their beliefs are. I think there can be some limitations with some religions. I've never been personally attached to any religion. When my parents raised us as children, even though my mother was a Catholic and my father was Protestant, they just said to the kids, choose what you want. And
Hmm.
we never went to church regularly or anything like that. They just said, choose which religion. So I went to tried different religions, and I didn't like the limitation on them. So I was like, nope, 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 nope. I like aspects of this, but don't like that. I probably relate to Buddhism more than any of the others. But I also am a big fan of we are one, right? Like the collective consciousness kind of, I don't like separation. And as we see in the world, there's so much separation because of religion. But as far as manifestation is concerned, you absolutely have to have the belief. You got to have the belief. You got to have faith. You got to believe in the invisible. You got to believe in the impossible sometimes. I mean, that was really what inspired me to write Be a Dog with a Bone, because I had written my first book and I was ignorant, meaning I didn't know what was required to be a success as an author, but I was willing to learn, and I'm going to find out. Like, first of all, even the idea of writing a book at the time, this is well over 20 years ago, I didn't know what was required, but I was willing to learn and I was willing to apply what I was learning, and I wasn't going to let go of the goals. So, and I had to build the belief within me that what I have to say or share or write about is valuable, that it's worthy. Because this is one of the biggest things that I've noticed with authors. One of their biggest challenges is that they don't think that they have anything of value to bring in the marketplace. They say things like, "Well, who would want to read my book?" And
Yeah,
things like that, or "What's so unique about me and my story?" And so absolutely belief is essential. It's a very key part of success. You got to believe in it.
I love it. Myron Golden, whom I deeply admire, he also saying that you must be believing and be living in that belief even when you will be lying. And this is absolutely
Right.
fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah, like think about that statement. Like, even if you hear a lie enough times, you will start to believe it,
Yeah,
right?
that's
And
absolutely
that's why the
right.
repetition works.
Yeah, this is how our subconscious mind works. And when you
Exactly.
mentioned a couple of things now, when you said who gonna watch my video and who gonna read my book, uh, it's a self-doubt in different
Right.
ways. How do you deal with self-doubts, and do you ever have them? Do you ever have somebody
Oh,
whispering
yeah.
on your ear, "Oh, you're not good enough. That's not the right way"? Because I can tell you honestly, for myself, I'm having them daily, and I believe that
Oh, yeah,
my
for sure.
my entrepreneurial journey, probably like everybody else, it's based on uncertainty. I literally don't know, will this work? Will this benefit? Will this be a mistake? And I'm consistently having that some small evil, how Dean Graziosi said, inner villain who is whispering me, "Hey, this is not going to be well. This is not going to be fine.
Right.
That's wrong." But I would like to hear, how do you deal with that on a daily basis?
Yeah. I see it, like I'll feel it, as a thought or as an emotion, and recognize it's like it pops up. And to me, I'll immediately, I have a very heightened level of awareness, and I'll notice that it's there. So if it pops up, it's like, oh, so I won't judge it. That's
Mhm.
important. You don't judge it. You just have the awareness. In fact, give thanks that you have the awareness, because giving thanks puts you into good energy. And so I give thanks. I notice that it's there and go, oh, isn't that wonderful? Isn't it wonderful that I'm noticing that it's there? Okay. What am I going to choose to believe? What thought is going to move me to a better place right now? And it depends on what the thought is. Like, I'll give you an example of that. The other day, we're in a producer meeting for my television series, and it's my idea. It's something I've come up with. I wrote the proposal, I wrote the script, and all of that. And I'm in this producer meeting where we're getting to the point where we're close on perhaps shooting the first pilot. And one of the things that we've been talking about is having me narrate it. So the show will open up. I'm going to be walking, with the microphone on and talking about, this show and the idea and what the viewers are about to witness and observe and things like that. And this thought popped up in my mind, maybe they should find somebody else. And I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I'm good enough, right? So all those thoughts started coming up because if you watch a show like on one of the television shows, like a broadcaster who's professional, has been trained in this industry, they make it look natural, right? They make it look natural. And the truth is, I can too. But when the thought popped up, I'm aware of it and give thanks that the awareness is there. But then I ask myself, what do I need to believe? I need to believe that I'm not only doing a great job, I'm the perfect person for this role and that got this. I've got this. So I just changed the dialogue that's in my mind at that moment to something that's going to feel better and going to support me. But Nick, as you're asking the question, I smiled because I remember many, many years ago, Bob and I were at an event, and it was an event where it was a ballroom full of people. It wasn't our event, it was somebody else had put on this event, but I was a speaker and Bob was a speaker. And I was going on next, and then Bob was following me. And so I'm standing at the side of the ballroom, like up against the wall, Bob's standing beside me. And I'm starting to feel very, very anxious. I'm starting to feel like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Like all the negative thoughts started floating in my consciousness, like, who are you? Bob Proctor's going to be watching you. And so all these, thoughts were popping up in my mind. What if I screw up? And so I'm feeling this incredible urge to find the exit and get out of there, right? Like to just run for the door and get out of here. And so I'm standing there, and this is all going on in my mind, and I'm standing beside Bob, and I turn to him, and he's so calm, right? He's just standing there, and he's feeling calm, and he's relaxed, and I said to him, I said, "Do you get nervous?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Are you nervous now?" And he goes, "No, not at all." And he said this to me like this. He said, "Are you?" Almost like he was disgusted that I was even asking the question, which was cute. I was like, "No, are you?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I feel like I'm going to be sick, like I'm looking for the exit door." And he said, then he said, Stop focusing on." No, he said this. He said, "It's because you're thinking of yourself." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, think about them. Think about the audience. Think about the people that are here." And I said, "They're the reason why I'm nervous, right? They're the reason. Like if there wasn't, 500 people in the ballroom right now, I'd probably feel relaxed." And he said, "You love teaching, right?" And I said, "Yes, I love teaching." He said, "Then just go up and teach. Like, do what you love. You know the stuff." And so he gave me this little pep talk, almost. So that helped, right?
Mhm.
And so sometimes when we're in those scenarios where we're feeling like the belief is gone, or we're feeling a lack of self-worth or whatever, we can listen to the voice in our own head that is the voice of praise, the voice of love, the voice of support, and have them ready, right? Like have that person ready to switch. Like I think it's so important to notice when you're out of alignment, right? Like
Yeah.
if I was out of alignment when I was diagnosed and going through my health challenge, it could have been a whole different scenario,
Oh,
right
absolutely.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But I knew enough just how valuable it is. to get your mind right back in alignment with what it is that you want. Because when we're thinking about hitting the wall, we're going to hit the wall, right? If that's what we're afraid of and that's what we're thinking about, we're giving it energy,
Absolutely.
we're feeding it.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we have to
there,
stop that.
there is a famous story that I don't know who said that, but when you're skiing down the mountain and if you're thinking about not hitting the tree, you're definitely going to hit it. So that's actually a
Right.
very interesting and true statement you're bringing in. But one thing where I didn't want to interrupt you, but I wrote it down, is that the way how you shift the angle, instead of you being angry when you face self-doubt, or instead of you being kind of like a down, you are
Yes.
firstly grateful and you first give a positive energy to that. That's actually the thing which
Yes.
changed everything, right?
Yeah,
Because that's the
absolutely.
foundation of
Totally.
change.
Yeah, you're right, Nick. When I think about I'm going to just simplify it just for a moment. When you feel good, you attract good. When you feel bad, you attract bad. Even if you think it's justifiable. Like, was it justifiable to feel overwhelmed and go, boo, poor me, I got a bad diagnosis or whatever? Sure. And I bet a whole bunch of people would have loved to come over and give me a hug and, oh, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. I wanted none of that. None of that. Like that energy is not going to support me. I'm going to be in good energy. In fact, after I got the diagnosis, I had a birthday party for my son's best friend. And my son is 32. And his best friend I've known since he was a baby. And Alex, his name is Alex, a really lovely kid. I love this kid. And it was his birthday, so I invited everybody over. We're gonna have a barbecue and celebrate Alex's birthday. And it was just maybe a week or two after I had the diagnosis. And he knew about it, right? And he came into my home and he wrapped his arms around me to give me a hug, because we always hug, big hugging family. And he started to cry. And I said, "What are you crying about?" "Oh, your diagnosis." I said, "Hey, listen, don't, don't give it any negative energy. Like I'm not looking for any pity or somebody to jump on board with that ship. It's gone. Like I'm residing in a healthy body. Like let it go, Alex." I had to calm him down because he was all
Yeah.
emotional about the diagnosis.
Most of the people would expect the opposite, to he calming down you, but this was your way of handling the
Right.
situation. I love it. And I'm sort of this kind of person. I never look at the things negative. I always believe in positive. I always believe in positive outcome. And not only that this is my belief
Good.
and somebody would say, "Hey, you're delusional." No, far from that. I have a certain proofs. I have a certain proofs in my life. I lived it. When I believe in positive, positive keep happening. So we are speaking here slowly about manifestation. Uh,
Yes.
but when it comes to you manifesting your goals, what is the
Yes.
practical steps? Like how this looking in your way
Yes.
and you teaching your clients, how this goes?
Yeah. Absolutely. I really believe that I summed it up perfectly in my 25th book called The Moment of Alignment. This is an example of what the cover looks like. The book's not released yet. The Audible version is released yet. But if you look at The Moment of Alignment, the subtitle is The Precise Moment Where Intention Becomes Reality. So what is the precise moment where intention becomes reality? Well, that's when you accept it as an accomplished fact. I think about even becoming a New York Times bestselling author. When I made that decision to do it, what the next step is, accept it as an accomplished fact. What does it feel like now that you are a New York Times bestselling author? When I decided to go for my PhD, I knew I had to get my BA first, my Bachelor of Arts degree, then a master's, and then a PhD. And it's like, oh boy, it's gonna be a lot of study, a lot of work. And it was like, I'm going straight to the place in conscious. This is done. This is done. You accept it as an accomplished fact. However, here's the big challenge. You could accept it as an accomplished fact this moment, but in the next moment, you've gone out of alignment, right? Like getting aligned with your desires as an accomplished fact means that you are feeling as if it's here now. I've done that with everything. I've done it with real estate. I've done it with my husband, the relationship. I attracted him into my life. I've done it with my business that's been, going on now for several decades. I've done it with my New York Times bestseller, with the movie, all of it. Any goal that I set for myself has always been the same process. And that process is decide what you want, make a committed decision. Like you have to decide this is done, right? Not this I will do. This is done. It's already done. It's a distinction that makes a big difference. And then what I do is because we've talked about discipline, the importance of discipline, I will do things that will ensure that I'm aligned all day, mostly the primary way all day. In Robert Collier's book, The Secret of the Ages, he said, this is not something that you do once in a while. You do this every hour of every hour of every day. And so, what does that really mean? It means that every hour of every day you're aligned.
Yeah.
So, it could be something like you remind yourself, right? You're reminding yourself, now that this is done, how do I feel? And then when you what you're doing is you're using your imagination. In Neville Goddard's book called Power of Awareness, there's a chapter in there, chapter 24. It's called Failure. And he says in this chapter, he says, the reason why people do not accomplish their goals is because they don't feel it naturally. And
Mm,
then, well, that would beg the question. Okay, so the reason why people don't accomplish their goals is because they don't feel it naturally. How do you get to the point where you feel it naturally? Especially in the beginning, because it won't feel natural. When I decided to become a New York Times bestselling author, that didn't feel natural to me, but through repetition, repetition, repetition. Now, what are you doing? You're using a mental faculty that you all have, we have, I have, you have, called imagination. And through implementing a daily practice every hour of every day, a practice of imagining, it's already here. You get to the point where it's like, oh, of course, absolutely, this is done. It's not a maybe, it is done. Like when my husband and I got together and I was looking at another property, a waterfront property, and my husband is, he's from the military. He's retired now, but he was former military. He was a pilot. So pilots are, and he's very analytical. He's very brain analytical. And pilots are people that they plan their route. They know exactly how they're going to get there. They know when they're going to get there. They have backup plans. They're trained in the event of an engine falling off. I mean, they're putting simulators and all this goes
data
on. And
data
so,
operative. Very
yeah, exactly.
data
And so when I
operative, yeah.
Exactly. So when I met my husband, he was like, we're so different. And I was like, you're right. We are different. But I honor him. I respect him and he honors and respects me. But I remember I was looking for this waterfront place and he said something like, well, if that happens, and I said, just allow me to correct you. I said, when? It's not an if. This is done. It's done. Like, that term, mark my words. I remember my mother used to
Yeah.
say, mark my words. It's like, mark my words. It's like it's written in cement. It's like it is done. You have to have that level of certainty in order to accomplish the goal. It's going to take work. It's going to take effort. It's going to take time. But when you understand what the process is to manifest any goal into reality, which is you name it and claim it, Bob used to say that, name it and claim it. Name it meaning write it down, like this is done, this is accomplished. Claim it means accept it as it's done, and then discipline yourself every day that you are in harmony with that outcome, which means you're on the frequency of that outcome. You're not down here or you're not some other level. You're right there, meaning I'm thinking, I'm acting, I'm speaking as the person that has already done this. It is done.
Fabulous. And how would you define what is the first mindset shift somebody should make if they want to attract wealth and success? What is the first thing, like foundation, they have to shift?
I think they have to commit to it. I think they absolutely have to commit to it because it's going to be uncomfortable, and that's okay. It's part of the process. And it's going to, require you to change your habits because we're habitual beings. Now, I look at that, us, you, me, being habitual beings as a good thing. But it can also be a detriment. And the reason why it can be a detriment is because if somebody's in the habit of thinking negative thoughts, if somebody's in the habit of self-criticism, if somebody's in the habit of procrastination, it's not going to serve them, right? So you got to break the habits. That can be a challenge for us humans, depending on your age as well. Like some people, like I work with people at all ages, but I have some clients that are early and they're, them changing their habits might take a little bit more work because they've been doing certain things in a certain way for so long. And so they got to change that way of being. They got to change the way that they've been thinking. They got to change the way that they've been speaking and change the way that they've been feeling as well. But you got to commit to it. You got to make a decision that this I will do. I'm willing to do the work. Their willingness has to be there. Like Bob used to say that when you decide to do something that you've never done before, you have to ask yourself two questions. And the two questions are, am I willing and am I able? Am I willing and am I able? And I believe that's where it starts. Am I willing? Am I willing to commit to this? Because
Mm,
there will be work. Some people, they just throw their hands up in the air and say, forget it. Like I think about my mom. My mom was this lovely woman who was very giving, but very negative, extremely negative. And it's not a criticism, it's just the way she was. Now, she was raised in a very negative environment, and her parents were raised in a negative environment. And I remember one time she said to me, she said, "It's just too late for me. It's too
mm,
late for me." And I said to her, I said, "You're still breathing. It's not too late for you. You just have to decide if you want to make the change."
yeah, there is one thing.
What it comes down to.
Yeah, there is one thing which is pretty similar in my life and which I want quickly to share with you is that somewhere from the teenage uh, period of my life, I wanted to change my life. I grew up in Serbia where my parents were just normal, regular people working for normal salary, 9 to 5 job, and I somehow felt it's not mine. And back in that time, I had some very high professors who used to travel, who used to go around and very beautiful places to spend the time. And I said to my father once, you know, Dad, I would like one day maybe to have some small business. Let it be even coffee shop. And he was looking at me thinking like, I'm preparing you for electrical engineering studies and you want to do coffee shop? And I continued, not realizing that he's already in his frame to shatter on me. And I said, like I would like to have some car, rent maybe some apartment or buy something small, but to live in some place where it's summer, where it's nice place, nice environment, to be free. Somehow I don't like this life of dress up pajama, change, dress up suit, go to work, come back, change. And he was looking at me and said, and car also. And I said, yeah. I said, you know what? I've worked all my life, and for this type of life, you will need this amount of money. Showing me with hands how big amount of money I need to have. And then he said, I can't give you that. I don't have it. And I immediately want to tell you, stop dreaming. You never might have it. And in that moment, this hit me a lot. Like when you feel that your parent don't believe in you, just from the point of him not being able to manifest, to think that direction or to see that was hurting me a lot. Later on, I changed everything in my life. And today I do that lifestyle exactly. I'm not working 9 to 5 job. I'm living on the beautiful tropical island with my family. We're renting the flat. From one side here, I'm seeing the ocean. It's Atlantic Ocean. From that side here, I'm seeing volcano. It's beautiful. So this is something
Nice.
where I understand you absolutely. And you said one thing about your mom and you see about my father. They were people who may criticize themselves. I want to ask you, how do you deal with negative feedback? Because I believe
Yeah,
that you face it on social media as people who don't believe, people with the
sure.
wrong stage of mindset are able to say, hey, that's a fluff. That's not true. What are you talking about? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, the truth is that everybody's going to get it. We live in a world where it's just the way it is, right? And I absolutely believe that we are in control of how we feel always in all ways. So nobody causes us to feel anything unless we decide to feel it. Like when you mentioned about your dad, I was thinking about when I told my parents I was going to write a book. Their response was this. you're writing a book? That was their response, like it was a
Yeah.
joke. And even when I decided to incorporate a company, they're like, what are you doing? Like, you're setting yourself up for failure or whatever. But this is what I believe. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks of you. It doesn't. What matters most is what do you think of yourself? How do you feel about yourself? And so I've developed an imaginary plexiglass shield that's on me and just bam, off it goes.
Bounce.
Now, if somebody, yeah, like if somebody bounces, exactly. If somebody does get upset because of something somebody said to them, then that might be because they believe there's an element of truth to it. So you need to
Mm.
evaluate that. If someone says to you, you're no good or you can't do this or whatever, and you get upset by it, why would you get upset if you knew it wasn't true, right?
Do
Like
you
if you
think
knew it wasn't true.
do you think that people like you or me are less vulnerable? Or we just have this in ourselves that our belief is stronger than any doubt?
Yeah, I think it's two things. I think it's that. I think it's definitely the belief, but I think it's the passion as well. Like think about like I work with a lot of authors as well. And another, block that authors have is their fear of being criticized. You're going to be criticized. Like if you go on Amazon right now and you look at a Harry Potter book. Now, is Harry Potter, are those books
Oh,
successful? Of course. I mean, she became the first billionaire author. And so there are people who are slamming Harry Potter, don't like Harry Potter, have lots of negative things to say, are critical of J.K. Rowling or whatever. But it is what it is. I remember when I first became an author, Mark Victor Hansen said these words. He said, "The higher you rise, the more people will throw stones at you." And think
wow.
about you, Nick, with your podcast, right? The more successful your podcast is, sure, you may get millions and millions of people that are following you, that are tuning in, that are watching you or whatever, but there will be people who are critical and who will say it's a bunch of garbage or whatever. And it's like, that's their deal, right?
Absolutely.
It's like what I talked about earlier with my husband. My husband is not into this stuff. I get this question asked of me a lot. How do I deal with my husband? He won't come to the seminars. He won't set a goal.
Oh yeah,
Leave him
because
alone.
they're expecting support, right? They're expecting to consistently be with
Yeah.
you.
Or it's like a prerequisite, that they have to be, or somebody who's declaring the type of person that they want to attract in their life. And it's like their list of things is they have to be into personal development. Why? What does it matter? My husband's not into personal development. When I went to Hawaii to speak at Bob's 1% Club, his, exclusive elite of the elite program, where there was only like 14 people in the room. I was there to teach as well. And I said to my husband, I said, honey, do you want to come in the room with me? Because Bob and Denny knew each other. They were kind of funny together. And Denny's like, nah, I'm okay. I think I'll go golfing today. And I'm thinking, and I didn't say this, it wasn't a criticism about my husband, but I'm thinking so many people would absolutely love to be in that room,
Yeah,
and Denny was invited as a guest to be in that room, no charge. And he was like, nah, I'm okay. I'm good. And I respect that. I respect that about my husband. My husband is a happy guy. He was raised in a nice environment. He didn't have the crap programming put into his mind as a child. And you know what? I feel he's my greatest accomplishment. I really do. Attracting this
wow.
man into my
Nice.
life, I feel like I won the lottery of love. I thank God every day for this man. He is a
Nice.
blessing beyond blessings. And if you met my husband Nick and you didn't like him, I'd be surprised. It's kind of like Bob Proctor. Bob used to say this about Brian, his son. He used to say, "If you don't like my son Brian, there's something wrong with you," because
Yeah,
Brian is just one heck, but he's
it's
such a nice
absolutely
guy.
yeah, it's no possible to not like Brian, to dislike him. I must ask
Yeah,
you, how long have you been together with your husband?
over 20 years.
Fabulous.
Over years.
Respect.
So he's my second husband. So I was married before. I married a wonderful man, Charles, and Charles is the father of my son. And Charles and I are still friends to this day. But Charles and I just we're like oil and water. We just didn't mix. Plus, Charles was highly critical of this industry. And to me, this industry is my life, right? He thinks it's a bunch of garbage. And so I didn't really like, I didn't allow it to affect me, but it was kind of like it just wasn't working. I feel that we're like a bird and a fish. We fell in love, but we didn't want to live in each other's environment, right?
I get
And
it.
so we divorced. And then after we divorced, I decided I am attracting the most wonderful relationship into my life, a relationship that is built on mutual trust and respect and values. Like my husband values family, I value family, honesty, integrity, respect, all of that. And so I decided that I'm going to manifest him into my life. So I had became very clear. What does it feel like now that I have this wonderful relationship in my life? And I went out one day walking my dog and I met him. He was moving into the neighborhood. And so I met him. And as soon as I saw him, I liked what I saw. We started having conversation. We got to know each other first, and then we started dating. And that was well over 20 years ago now.
Great, great story. Thank you for sharing that. You see, I have a couple of questions here more, and one of them I prepared specifically for myself. Being an entrepreneur like we are, it requires a lot. Somehow, many times I cannot exit off my thoughts. I cannot leave the work on the
That's
table.
true.
And I want to ask you, being a 5 decades in the business, how do you balance success, personal life, relationship, everything else, family? How you manage all that? Like, teach me something.
Yeah. That's a good question, a really good question. By the way, I've been studying success for almost 5 decades, but my business has been incorporated for over 3 decades. So I've been over 30 years in business. But nonetheless, it's a great question. Number one is the answer is I have rules. So my rules are I don't work evenings, don't work weekends, unless, there's some circumstances where I might be in Los Angeles or I might be doing an event, or when Bob was alive, I was speaking at his events. But my sort of soft rule is my evenings are for family, weekends are for family. But it doesn't shut off. It's kind of like what you said. Like, I think as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, it's kind of like a 24/7, and nowadays with the internet, like you're not in business Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. It's
Oh,
not the
yeah.
way it is. You might get an email at 9:30 at night and you got to address it, or Saturday morning at 5:30. Not that you're on 24/7. But somebody asked my husband recently, something about vacation. When it was last time you guys took a vacation? I rarely take vacation, but that's only because I love what I do so much. I
The,
really, really love what I do.
the
Now we do
passion.
things together. Yeah, it's the passion for sure. So I think you have to create rules for yourself. Like I know when I first started my business, I was a single mom at the time. So my son, his name is Michel. Michel would be at his dad's part of the time. So whenever Michel was at his dad's, I would just work, 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 like a lot of hours every day. But I found myself burning out and I didn't want to burn out. But when Michel was home, like I'd pick him up from school, in the afternoon, I'm with him. I would totally be with him. But when you go to bed at night, I'd start working again. So I realized I had to create some rules to manage some kind of a balance. And that's when I decided no more work in the evenings, no more working on the weekends. And when I'm with my family, it's family time. Like the phone gets shut off, there's no access to laptop. It's quality time. Like I think I mentioned to you later today, I'm picking up my grandson from school
Yeah.
and my husband's going to come too. We're going to go for dinner and then we're going to go go-karting. And we're just going to do a fun activity. Now he would be sleeping over, but he has a dentist appointment tomorrow, so I'll have to take him back home. But no problem. I block off time, quality time. Sunday we're celebrating with my granddaughter. Last Friday I took my little granddaughter to get her nails done together and we went out for lunch after. And so I reserve quality time with my family to do things that are important to us. So I think that's it. For me, my priority is number one is family. Business is second. It's second. Now, I don't know whether other entrepreneurs have that, hierarchy of order, but that's mine. It's family number one. It's always family. Like I remember one time, Kayla, who's my daughter-in-law, and you met Kayla. She works with me. We've worked together now for about 8 years. And she was telling me that James, my grandson, her son, had to go for some dental surgery and they were going to be putting him out like with anesthetic. And I said to her, I said, "You want me to go with you?" because I knew my son wasn't available to go. And she said, yes, please. And I moved some appointments and I went with her. And that's the kind of thing that you do for your family, is that you give them the priority of the time.
That's great thing. Only a couple of questions more I want to ask you, and one of them is there anything you wish you knew or learned earlier in your career than you learn later on? Like, is there anything you say to yourself, Peggy, if I could knew that time would be way better?
I would say no. My short answer is no, because I think it's all perfection. I think the journey is perfection. The things that I've gone through have all been perfect because it's brought me to this point in time with all the knowledge and all of the experience and all of the wisdom that I have. Without it, I don't think I'd be the same person that I am today. So no.
Yeah.
I mean, would it have helped if I had been programmed as a young child, with these materials like Brian was,
Mm.
like
Yeah.
Brian's upbringing, like Brian and I have done programs together. Like Brian and I have shared the stage. In fact, when Bob used to do the Matrix event, it was always the Brian the Peg show, like we were the ones that ran the afternoon together. And so we would often talk about that. Like it was completely different, like the contrast, the way he was raised and the way that I was raised. Like I was raised in a very dysfunctional, abusive environment. Like I would be beaten. Like I remember crawling across the floor as I'm getting beaten as a child. I never, ever, ever heard the words, I love you. Never. Nobody said that to me. So that's part of why I got to my teenage years and I didn't want to live because, I'd been beaten and abused, all these years. I felt like a worthless piece of poop. Like that's where I was. But Brian, no. I mean, his father would, tuck him into bed at night and tell him, you can do anything that you want. Like he was
Yeah.
programmed very, very differently.
Yeah, I know that stories about Bob putting hand on his chest and talking, and this is something
Yeah,
what I'm even doing with my son, and it works very well. I love it.
love it.
Peggy, you did a business even in the time when all this social media wasn't even on that hype, wasn't
Yeah,
even that big
wasn't
boom.
even there.
Yeah, and I want to ask you. Today, we are living in the world of multiple distractions. Literally everything can move our
Yes.
focus. How do you stay focused today? And is there anything from the past which you literally like put in today's present moment and say like, yeah, this is gonna work with me being focused and staying ahead to my goals?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. As much as it's a wonderful thing, this thing called the World Wide Web. Like in 1994, that's when I incorporated my company. The World Wide Web was just opening up. In fact, I was working for the first dedicated internet access company in the world, in our country. And so, I remember first hearing about this concept of the internet and not really knowing what it was, but I was fascinated because I really believed in the potential. In fact, I set up my own website in 1995, and it
Awesome.
was long before. Like I even registered anthonyrobbins.com because I thought, oh, Tony needs to be online. And I created a website for him and reached out to his organization to say, you guys got to do this. And I ended up going through his Mastery University program because they wanted what I had created. So I was there when it opened up, when the World Wide Web first opened up. So it was new, it was exciting, but the challenge was not a lot of people were online. I mean, email wasn't really there yet. And so, but what I love is the constant evolution of the internet. And yeah, it can be very distracting. If I think about ADD, attention deficit disorder. I think anyone that has ADD, it becomes a little bit of a challenge to go online. It's like, where do you go, right?
Yeah.
And I have ADD. So, but I find that can be a good thing. There's a lot of really successful people, like Steve Jobs had ADD. It's not a bad thing. It can be a really, really good thing. And so I found that you just focus. Now, what I do as an entrepreneur is this. I wake up every day asking and answering this question. How will I serve better today than I did yesterday? How will I
Uh,
serve better today than I did yesterday? I really believe in the process of manifestation. I believe that energetically we have to imagine that our success is already there, that we're already, the success that we desire to be, that it's already done. That's the premise that I live from. And the way will reveal itself. I get excited about the internet because you never know, like your podcast, Nick, it's available for the 6 billion people that are online. You never know who's going to
Yeah.
listen to it. You never know who's going to connect with it. You never know who's going to start talking about it. I was watching an interview last evening with an actor. His name is gonna come to me in a minute, and he was talking about movies, right? There's so like the whole media world has changed significantly as well with all these streaming channels and the
Yeah.
way that movies are now released. And this gentleman had said that the absolute best way for a movie now to become a success is through word of mouth, which means people have to be talking about it. So they also have to know about it. But even if it's just one person or a couple of people, they could be talking. That could cause somebody else to talk. That could cause somebody else to talk. And then boom, your podcast is number one in the world, right? Like it can happen. And so you just got to come from a place of I'm here to serve. I'm here to serve and I'll serve better today than I did yesterday. And trust, this is where the faith factor has to come in. You have to trust and know that it is already done. It's absolutely already done. And there are elements of, things that even before the World Wide Web was in place that still work. One is we will get compensated based on what we bring to the world of value. So when you're bringing something like you're doing, Nick, like you're bringing value to the world with your podcast, right? And you do it from a place of service and you do it from a place of unconditional gift. Like you're doing this not with your hand out going, how will I earn? How will I
Yeah.
get back? Right? You're doing it from a place of giving, unconditional giving. But the giving comes from value. And that's fundamental in any business. Like even in 1970s, if a business was successful, it's because they brought something of value to the marketplace that people loved and appreciated and used. That's what you're doing here too. And also marketing. We got to market, right? You teach selling, like it's one of your areas of expertise. Bob Proctor used to say, when you learn how to sell, you will never, ever, ever be without.
Yeah.
Never be without. It's the greatest skill you could ever learn and it's important. Like you have to come from a place of helping people understand, like, and that comes from persuasion. You mentioned Myron Golden. He's a master at that.
Yeah.
Like he's
Absolutely.
brilliant at selling. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and those skills, if you don't have them, get them, learn them, and then apply them. And that was applicable in the 1940s, is applicable as in the 1980s, is applicable today.
It's a
You've got to
principle which never
learn
change.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It'll never
L-
change. So that's how we
last,
bring the past concepts now.
Lastly, I want to ask you if you could leave one message for the next generation of leaders, entrepreneurs, what would it be?
To invest, like invest in yourself, like always be open to learning and growing and expanding. Don't think you've got it all figured out. I think that's a dangerous place to be. It's,
Mm,
when I said a moment ago that I wake up in the morning and I think of how will I serve better today than I did yesterday. I mean, I'm at a point now, I'm in my 67th year where I don't have to work. I don't have to work. I could retire today. We're financially set. I'm fine. I don't have to work, but I love it. I love it. I love what I do so much. And I know that the rewards come from giving. It's the giver that gets in this world. It's not why I do it. It's fulfilling. It's
brilliant.
purposeful. It's something that I'm passionate about. In fact, on my desk in this little marble piece, I have my purpose, which is I am here to make a positive and beneficial contribution to the lives of hundreds of millions of people. And oops, how I do that is how I do that. I don't have to know how I'm going to do that. Could it be through your podcast? Maybe. Could it be through my next book? Maybe. Could it be through a speaking engagement? Maybe. I don't have to
Yeah.
know. I'm just here to serve. And so I think that, we all have to really come from that place. It's a very rewarding and a fulfilling way to live. Like figure out what your purpose is and then live it.
Beautiful. Peggy, I want to thank you so much for all your time you spare for this podcast. We slightly go even over time, we agreed. And this was amazing chance for me to speak with you and all the values you will be giving to all of us. It's absolutely fabulous. I believe that so many people would like to find you and maybe to contact you or to consume some part of your stuffs and how they can do it. What would be the best way for them?
Yeah, the best way is go to my website, peggymccall.com, which is PEGGYMCCOLL.com. We do free events, quite often. We have giveaways. There's different ways that I serve people. It's all on my website, and I'm accessible through my website as well.
If you came along until the end of this episode, you understood one thing. And this is that there is a pain which can shape your future, not necessarily determine who you are and what your future will look like. This episode with Peggy McColl, a woman who's shown us that transformation isn't a destination, but a lifelong journey, was a different one. She reminded us that the real growth reminds and demands courage, presence, and willingness to face our own shadows, even in the darkest moments. If you're chasing quick fixes, you will not find them here, nor on this podcast. But if you're looking for something what can transform your journey, your current position where you are, and move you where you want to be, this is definitely a place where you can do that. So hit that subscribe button, not because I need another subscriber on my list, but because of you who need the support of me, my team, and community on your journey. And what we will do in return is that me and my team will do our best to bring more entrepreneurs who are successful, whose stories are moving, and who can give you the best possible advice for free, simply watching these sort of episodes. My name is NGrS. This was NGrS Show, and I will see you in the next one.